Hello, everyone. This is Rose. Today's topic from the Book of Life is Betrayal Due to Jealousy. The shock of betrayal by a trusted friend of 30 plus years. Let's take a look at this short story from the Book of Life. Where do I go from here? Thought Anne after receiving her divorce decree. I did not imagine myself single with a 4-year-old child 10 years after saying I do. But here I am, having to plan my life as a single mother, and I don't have a clue where to start. Okay, thought Anne, the first thing I need to do is find an apartment for me and Junior, and childcare near my job. Having to pick up Junior from childcare near his dad's home brings back so many good and bad memories I care not to revisit at this time in my life. I need to focus on the future. Okay, it's time to put my thoughts into action. Anne found a 2-bedroom apartment on the other side of town from where she lived with her ex-husband. Her and Junior had finally adjusted to their new norm. As a supervisor over 10 employees, Anne is usually the first to arrive at work and the last to leave. She was happy Junior childcare was close to the job. Her robotic routine Monday through Friday brought a sense of peace. Anne's company was growing, which meant more work for Anne's department. Anne and her manager agreed they need to hire a new employee in order to assist with the additional work. Finding someone with the qualifications for the job was exhausting. After 2 weeks of interviews, Anne and her manager decided to use an outside agency to find a temp to hire employee. The agency highly recommended someone who was in the midst of branching outside of their family business. Anne and her manager interviewed the temp to hire person and agreed to give her a chance. Susie's first day went well. As a fast learner, she was able to handle her assigned workload. One day after leaving work, Anne noticed Susie was outside standing near the corner. Susie had clocked out 2 hours prior to Anne's leaving. Anne drove up to Susie and asked her was everything okay. Susie stated she was waiting on her boyfriend, who had her car. She also expressed her concerns for him not coming in time to pick her up so that they can get her kids from their after-school childcare program. Anne asked Susie the location of her kids' childcare. Because it was near, Anne offers to take Susie after picking up her son from his childcare. Susie is a single mother of 4, all boys close in age. Anne heads home after dropping off Susie and her kids. Based on the apparel Susie boys was wearing, Anne was happy she hired her. She felt Susie was financially stricken and hoped her pay was sufficient. Taking Susie and her boys home had become a weekly routine for Anne. She felt it was time to have a friend-to-friend conversation with Susie. She invited Susie and her sons over for dinner. Anne knew she needed to prepare some comfort food for Susie's high-energy boys. She needed a meal that would put them in a relaxed state after eating. Anne fried chicken, prepared collard greens with smoked turkey, and mac and cheese. The heavy meal worked. The boys played computer games with Junior after they ate. This gave Anne time to talk with Susie. She asked Susie, why do your boyfriend always have your car? Susie claimed he is using it to look for a job. Susie explains that her boyfriend lives with his mother on the same street where she lives, and that he is 8 years younger than her. So he is only 20 years old? Asked Anne. Yes, He is very mature, states Susie. Anne learns a lot about Susie, including the fact that she could not cook. Susie and Anne's friendship grew closer after the dinner. Susie begins to cling to Anne. She will confide in her about the past and present hardship in her life. Anne felt compelled to help Susie in any way that she could. She would often cook for them at her home, treat them to amusement parks and the movies with her and Junior. After years of friendship, their sons would tell people that they were cousins. Susie and Anne's work relationship began to suffer when Susie stopped completing her assignments by the deadline. Anne could no longer cover for her. Anne talked her manager into recommending Susie for a job in a different department rather than fire her. 6 months after Susie was transferred to another department, she was fired by the manager of that department. After being fired, Susie and Anne continued to be friends. When Anne moved into her house, Susie moved closer to where Anne lived. Anne adopts her sister's 3 kids after her sister passed away. Anne and Susie will help each other with their kids. Although Anne's family had increased by 3, she continued to treat Susie and her boys as long as she was financially able. When Anne's finance status no longer allowed her to treat Susie, their relationship began to change. Susie became more of a distant friend. Anne was being told by mutual friends that Susie was always talking about her in a negative way. By this time, all the kids had graduated from high school, so Anne did not take to heart what people said. She felt the disconnect between her and Susie was because the kids were older, and there was no need to take them to amusement parks and movies as a group. Anne's youngest adopted child became pregnant at the age of 18 with her first child, and at the age of 20 with her second child. Susie begins to spend a lot of time with Anne's adopted kids. The girls would spend nights at Susie's home having sleepover. One of the girls began to mimic Susie's personality traits by dressing inappropriate for a girl her age. The more time spent with Susie, the less Anne's kids would listen to her advice. Susie became obsessed with Anne's youngest daughter, kids. She would often babysit them when they were babies. She would often try to control the girls' lives by telling them how to dress, who to date, who not to date, and what to do with their life. Anne's oldest daughter began to see the hold Susie had on her and her sister. She no longer wanted to accept Susie's negative talk against her mom, Anne. She no longer believed the lie Susie told her, that your mom only adopted you for the money, and that your mom doesn't love you and your siblings like she does her own birth son. The oldest daughter realized everything Susie said was not the truth. However, because the youngest daughter was in need of Susie's assistance in babysitting, she remains under her control. Anne was working a full-time job and wasn't able to babysit during the weekday. However, she spent a lot of time with her grandkids on the weekend. When the youngest daughter moves in with her kid's father, Susie tried to convince her that he was not a good person. She wanted the youngest daughter to move in with her. Susie tried to use Anne to convince the youngest daughter to move in with her. Susie told Anne that the youngest daughter's boyfriend was abusing her. When Susie's plan did not work, she spent the next 2 years building a child endangerment case against the youngest daughter and her boyfriend. She would call Child Protective Service weekly. Each time Child Protective Service would do a welfare check on the grandkids, they would not find any evidence of what the caller would state. Ann had no idea this was happening behind her back. Susie would occasionally call Ann, but never told her about the call she was making to Child Protective Service. After 2 years of getting nowhere with calling Child Protective Service, Susie befriends someone who worked in the Department of Children's Services. Susie's friends tell her what to do in order to get the kids removed from their parents. This friend believed everything that Susie told her and therefore went out the way to help her to get the kids removed from what she thought was a dangerous living situation. Susie, her son, along with the son's wife, began to spy on the youngest daughter. Susie went as far as to tell Ann that the grandkids was in danger. Susie stated her son and daughter-in-law witnessed the father beating up the youngest daughter outside in public and that he dragged her by the hair through the streets. Ann was so upset with the news she received from Susie, she immediately contacted her daughter. Ann's youngest daughter denied everything Susie had said. 2 days after Susie had talked with Ann, Child Protective Service comes to the youngest daughter's house. Because the youngest daughter was at the end of moving, the only things left in the apartment was trash. The youngest daughter refused to allow Child Protective Service in her apartment. She asked her kids to come to the door so that the worker could see that they were okay. The worker looks through the window, then asked the parents, why was there no furniture? And why was trash all over the floor? The parents explained to the worker that they had just moved and they were in the middle of cleaning up the apartment before turning in the keys. The next day, while unpacking at their new location, the youngest girl receives a call from the police stating that they were at their old location with Child Protection Services. The police stated that Child Protection Services have orders to remove the kids from their home. The police ordered the kids to come back and bring the kids into the police station. When the parents did not agree because they had moved over 2 hours away, the police instruct the parents, in order to avoid kidnapping charges, you must have your kids in court the very next day. The grandkids were taken from their parents at court and was given to Susie's oldest son, who was listed as the kid's uncle and the only relative. The parents told the judge that Susie's son was not related to their kids and that they had family that was willing to take their kids. The judge asked Child Services to look into this matter and to see if there was any family available to take the kids. The parents were able to get a copy of the report and charges against them. The report listed 2 years of calls from 3 different numbers claiming child endangerment. And being furious about the kids being taken and given to Susie's son the same day of court, decided to call Susie to find out how is this possible. Susie tried to convince Ann that she told her that she was working with a social worker to have the kids removed because they were not safe being with their parents who fight publicly in the streets. Also, she tried to convince Ann that they had agreed that she and her son would be the best care providers for the kids since Everyone in Ann's family worked full-time jobs and were not available to take the kids. Ann and her family comes together in order to fight against the lies told by Susie and Child Protective Service. Leave a comment if you would like to hear part 2 of this story. Click the thumbs up and subscribe button to receive notifications of more articles from the Book of Life. Be blessed and safe. Peace.